It was more than 8 years ago that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called for a new nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous people in the country. He campaigned to base that relationship on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. 8 years later, the shiny election-style promises about advancing reconciliation seem to have dulled for frontline First Nations, Métis, and Inuit advocates. Joining us now to discuss reconciliation ahead of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is Mr. Bruce Allan, Resolution Health Support Worker at the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. Mr. Allan, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Good afternoon.
Now, Mr. Allan, it's become a sort of tradition to speak with you during and ahead of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. But has there been any real change in terms of reconciliation? Has this come about since our past conversations?
I think I do see an increase in the news with awareness events around Truth and Reconciliation Day, Orange Shirt Day. More and more organizations are doing events. Of note that I could think of nearby would be Archie Shantyman, a survivor from the Williams Lake Residential School, starting a walk from his community, uh, a walk to the residential school in Williams Lake, and then walking back home to bring back the spirits of those children that were lost at that residential school. Other walks going on, commemoration walks, would include survivors such as Francis Holland from Lake Babbing Nation, who went to the residential school I attended. And so we have people that are, participating in making sure that people are aware of the residential school experience. A couple, Cameron and Charity West, are also doing a walk across Canada to create awareness with missing and murdered, and there's so many survivors out there with residential schools, day schools, the 60s scoop, the Indian hospitals, and missing and murdered. So there's a lot of events I see that are on the rise, and I think that's positive. But it's so far it's still the telling of our truths. Reconciliation would mean that we forgive, and I don't think we're at that stage yet. Still, we're still telling our truths of what's happened in the residential schools and how that's carried down to our communities today.
From the sounds of it, there seems to be a lot of progress in terms of recognition and keeping the conversation going. But in terms of forgiveness, there's still a lot of work still needing to be done, sir. Now, another thing I wanted to touch with you would be these grounds of former residential schools. As we continue to find these areas of interest on these grounds of former residential schools, we're seeing a rise in denialism. We even saw some deniers trying to dig up areas of interest at the former Kamloops residential school. So how is this rise in denialism impacting First Nation communities and our efforts toward reconciliation?
Well, how that affects our communities across Canada is that they're trying to take away the voice of the survivors and intergenerational survivors from telling their truths, about their experiences. And the denialism does that, and it continues the genocide that these institutions represented for our people. And so it's a continuation of that genocide if they keep denying that these events happened. They need to learn more, and they need to learn the truth. And we've always gotten one side of when we've taken history for courses, we've always got the one sided version. We've never heard the Indigenous side of history. And it's starting. In BC, we have the elementary and the secondary schools that are starting to really talk about those things, but we still have a lot of people that will not acknowledge and recognize the history.
clearly there seems to be a gap in terms of education of what really happened here in our country. A lot of work still needing to be done, but Mr. Allan, we sincerely appreciate you joining us every single year to talk about this.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.